Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining Dorsey Ross on this episode of The Dorsey Ross Show. In this episode, Dorsey interviews another special guest that will give you hope and inspire you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining me on another episode of The Dorsey Ross Show. Today, we have a special guest with us. His name is James Brown. He is a scientist who presents a new solution to a biblical passage from Daniel, confirming God's existence, Jesus' messiahship, and Scripture's reliability. He is also the author of God, which presents a new and surprisingly precise solution to Daniel's passage and verifies it using objective evidence. This solution confirms God's existence, like I said, Jesus' messiahship and Scripture's reliability. James, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Dorsey. It's good to be here and with you and your listeners.
I always like to open up with a icebreaker question. What's something my listeners may not know about you?
Oh, what's something your listeners may not know about me? Well, goodness, what can I say? I don't really see myself as a remarkable person at all. I see myself as being quite normal for someone who was born in a church-going family, yet was not terribly into church or word, who went to college and took a technical degree and fell into this world of apathy and drifting away from God, hanging out with people who wanted to be scientists. And, you got to prove it to me. If I'm going to believe something, you have to show me the evidence. And I did take that to heart, and I still do. And I think in the end, it worked out for the best, because I'm able to approach questions that most people approach on faith alone and unpack them based on objective evidence. And many people find that very helpful. It's a lot easier to believe something when you see the basis for believing it.
Right. What one thing about your career, about you being a scientist, that you didn't expect?
Well, I didn't expect to succeed as much as I did, and I know that sounds boastful, but I was able to help many good people build a business, and which we sold a few years ago, and that's been very transformative. Now, I had already come back into the Word and come back to faith prior to that time, a few years prior to that time. But I certainly did not see the outcome and the timing. The timing was just great. I would not want to be running a business right now.
Tell us about your life, which you did a little bit already, and your...
Well, I think the most important thing is my faith walk. That's in the context of the book that I've written. Like I said, I was not terribly into the Word and had been somewhat apathetic and complacent for most of my career. And then I had a child, and something awoke in me that, here I am responsible for another human being. And whereas in the past I have felt the love from others, as we do when we're children, people love us, everybody loves babies and little kids, and that feels good, but I really didn't understand the power of the love that comes out of you. And that's far more overwhelming. And it's like a mighty river. It flows out of your heart like a mighty river. And that awoken in me an understanding of, I think, God's love. It was the closest thing that I had experienced to God's love, is the love for my child. So that started several things in motion. And one day I was driving past a church, and I felt the word to go there. I don't know where. It is not an audible word, but I felt compelled to go there. And in that church, which was surprisingly welcoming, not all of them are, but this one was, there was one of the best Bible studies that I had ever been in. And that unlocked a curiosity in me in exploring the word more deeply. And I saw a presentation on passage in Daniel. It's found in Daniel chapter 9, where Daniel is predicting the precise timing of Jesus's arrival on earth the first time. Now, remember, Daniel, he lived in the 500s BC, let's say, the 6th century BC. From about 620, we think he was born in about 620 BC, and that he died probably shortly after 535 BC. But we're not precisely sure on those dates. But there is a passage in Daniel 9:25. It is the only sentence in the Bible that gives the precise timing of the Messiah's arrival. And it actually uses the word Messiah, unlike most messianic prophecies. So there's no doubt what he is doing here. And it was so, everybody knew it was such an important passage, even though no one could come to an agreement on what it meant. People knew that this was key. It was so important that Jesus himself referred to it. He referred to this prophecy as a whole. The prophecy goes from Daniel 9:24 to Daniel 9:27. But to understand it, you should actually read all of Daniel 9. But anyway, Jesus made reference to this prophecy. That's in Matthew 24:15. And he added a little line. He said, "Let the reader understand." And that's interesting because a lot of people think, well, let the reader of Matthew understand this verse in Matthew. But actually, when Jesus said that, his words weren't written yet. And he is referring to the reader of Daniel because he mentions Daniel by name, actually. When you see the abomination spoken of by Daniel the prophet, and then it says, let the reader understand. So we are urged to read and understand that passage. And when we turn to Daniel, we see this sentence that starts with the words, therefore you are to know and understand. So this call out that Jesus gave us is repeated in Daniel. Therefore, you are to know and understand that from the going forth of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Now, that's very cryptic, but there is a solution, and the solution is far more extensive, it's far more robust, and it's far more objectively verifiable than anyone in the past has even imagined.
What the outcome of that passage as far as the date is concerned for when Jesus did come to earth the first time? Because we know we have an estimation, but nobody, really knows for sure what that exact date is.
Correct. But we can verify them. Actually, we do now. It's just that we've not come to a consensus agreement yet.
Okay.
As it turns out, there have been people who have placed the nativity, for example, correctly in the correct month. I've seen in the correct month and year. People have placed his baptism in the correct year. People have placed his triumphal entry in the correct year. But they're not agreed upon. And there are arguments for other dates. Here, we're bringing new evidence to show that not only did Daniel predict these to the day, but we can verify these by objective evidence, which is known now in today's modern age, which was not known before the 20th century. I mean, people have been trying to solve this for centuries. Even before Jesus came, We have in the Dead Sea Scrolls one attempt to explain or interpret this prophecy. That's how we know that it came before Jesus. That's one reason we know it came before Jesus. And this is quite important because if this is right, that means there is a God, and God is speaking to us accurately through his word recorded in the Bible. And yes, Jesus is the promised Messiah. That's pretty profound. That's a pretty profound thing to unpack.
What did you study, or what do you study as a scientist?
Let's take a quick break.
Hello, I would like to take a quick break to let you all know about my book called Overcomer, Discovering God's Plan Against All Odds. You can buy it on Amazon in a Kindle version, also in a paperback version. It is also available on Kindle Unlimited if you would like to buy it that way as well. It is my autobiography of my story and about my life. There will be also a link in the show notes in the bottom of the page. I hope you go and check it out, and hope you're encouraged by it and inspired by it as well. And now back to our show. God bless.
My field was chemistry, specifically organic chemistry, and in the field of lipids, lipid chemist. And my business dealt with, we developed, produced, and sold, distributed and sold specialty ingredients for personal care products like beauty, health, and hygiene. And we sold those worldwide.
And as a scientist, what made you decide to study, the Bible and study this specific scripture verse? Because I was not most, maybe not most, but a lot of scientists will say there is no God. What made you study the Bible and study that verse?
Yeah, here's a dirty secret. There are a lot more scientist believers than you see in the public eye. If you're a scientist and you're writing papers in your field of research, and those papers are reviewed by your peers all over the world, there are no borders in this process, then you cannot assert any supernatural explanation to what you are studying, even if the evidence leads to it, is very strong in pointing to a supernatural explanation. You still can't assert that in your papers. You can't do that in your professional life. Privately, though, there are many scientists who agree and see very clearly that there is no conflict between science and faith. None at all. I have yet to see anything that is any smoking gun evidence that anything in the Bible is not true. I've not seen it yet. And for decades, let's say, we've been expecting to see that. For example, we've been doing archaeology for about 200 years, almost 200 years, in a systematic, professional way. And when we started, a lot of people thought, well, okay, we're gonna finally find that the Bible is just myth. Things like the Hittites. They had no idea who the Hittites were, but the Hittites were in the Bible. And suddenly, well, we actually found the Hittite capital, and we can now read their writings. And yes, the Bible is accurate on that. And Daniel wrote about King Belshazzar in Babylon. And the skeptics scoffed, saying, well, there was no King Belshazzar, and he's not attested to in the literature nor in the archaeology. But then we found his name and referred to as a crown prince under Nabonidus. And so now we know that, yes, there was a King Belshazzar. And actually, he was ruling in Babylon because his father was absentee. And so time and time again, archaeology has either not conflicted or has upheld and confirmed the biblical narrative.
Going back to the passage of Daniel 9, you even mentioned that others have attempted to, understand it and solve it and whatnot. Where did they go wrong that they have not been able to, solve the understanding of that passage?
Yeah, I have to be very clear here and not speak. No matter what I say, do not understand it as being disparaging of anyone who has gone before me. It's a very challenging passage, and there have been some very intelligent people who have worked on this. Notably, even Isaac Newton spent a lot of time on this one and came and offered proposed a solution to it. Now, he did not claim finality. He actually suggested that what he has come up with is not necessarily the solution. But he had in his time insufficient evidence to verify what he was proposing. Now, there were others, for example, notable ones. Sir Robert Anderson in 1881 wrote a book called The Coming Prince, looked at this, and he came so close to breaking it wide open, but he found one fulfillment and then stopped and didn't check it. And actually, you can see now that the fulfillment that he proposed is technically not possible. 1977, another professor, Harold Hohner, wrote a book called Chronological Aspects of the Life of Christ. Very good book, very, very academically edifying book. And he corrected some of Anderson's mistakes and made a proposal, but it too is calendrically unviable. It can't be, it doesn't work. But in both of those cases, their biblical interpretation was spot on correct. It was calendrical technicalities that they slipped up on. Now, in Anderson's day and in Newton's day, they were not privy to the full the evidence that came about when, well, this is going to open up a big rabbit hole, but there are two events in the 20th century that we know happened, which cast light on this fulfillment and confirmed the overall chronology. And they simply were not privy to those. But once they happened, then they would have been. So I'm actually not only standing on the shoulders of giants, but can see over the fence. I can see more than they were able to see. And I think that's what made the difference ultimately.
Tell us a little more about the book and what you talk about and discuss in the book, and what is the title of the book
Sure.
as well.
Yeah, the title is Three Proofs of God, and the title is spot on accurate, that there are definitely three logical proofs of God that are new and objective. The takeaway is that here we are providing conclusive evidence of God's existence, Jesus's messiahship, and Scripture's reliability. Now, if someone, that should peg everyone's skepticism meter. It would mine. I wouldn't believe it just on the face of it. I would want to see evidence. And my writing this book and working on it for a decade in order to get this message out clearly, that's consumed my existence for my 50s, essentially. And we've really done some things that nobody has ever done before in this book. One, there is math, of course. So Daniel gives us numbers to work with. So we have to work with those numbers. And there is some math, but it's arithmetic. It's not advanced math. It's what you could do on a cheap calculator. And I had all of the math audited by a tenured mathematics professor at a U.S. university, and his attestation letter is one of the appendices of the book, because not everybody's a numbers person, but some people are, and the numbers don't lie, and they are objective. The second thing is that this book that we've written, it reads itself to you. At the top of every chapter, there's a QR code. And if you scan the QR code, the chapter reads itself to you. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we've not seen in other books. I don't know if anybody's ever done it before. I'm not claiming to be the first, but I've not seen anyone else do this. But readers say that it makes a big difference. Another thing that we've done is add an intro into each paragraph, like a one-sentence intro to each to each chapter, and then summary bullet points at the end of each chapter. So it tells you where you're going, it tells you the facts, and then it tells you and it summarizes what it's told you. So that too is people find helpful.
What are some of the beliefs of God other than the Daniel 9 that you talk about in your book?
Yeah, Daniel 9, one of the discoveries, the first one to talk about, is that Daniel 9:25 is referencing more than just one advent of Jesus. In fact, he's referencing 4 at least. And we are able to quantify and confirm those. The second is that Daniel's prophecy fits intimately and perfectly with a prophecy from Ezekiel, given in Ezekiel chapter 4, one that has just perplexed theologians for millennia. And it fits to the exact day when set in the framework of Daniel's prophecy. And that points to the reemergence of Israel as sovereign state in 1948. Israel's return of the old city of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount to Israel in 1967. Those are the events that we are able to look at and confirm that, for example, Isaac Newton was not able to see, nor Robert Anderson, or those who came before him.
So what you're saying is you can look at the Bible and they'll talk or they'll prophesy about that time in 1980.
Yes. And it also fits with 2 prophecies found in the book of Jeremiah 25 and Jeremiah 29. Those are the desolation of Judah and the 70-year captivity of Israel in Babylon, or of Judah in Babylon, actually. And that started the very day that Daniel was taken captive, and that's in Daniel chapter 1. That story is told in Daniel chapter 1. And that event, too, is actually prophesied. So it all fits. That's the thing. It all fits, and it fits to the day. It fits to the exact day. And that's the exciting part. We're taking one method. We are interpreting the chronology by the same method at every step, and in a way that we can also verify. We'll put it that way. We're not playing game. We're not changing the rules halfway through the game. It's the same method produces a result that is correct, precise to the day.
What do you hope to do next? What is the next on the horizon for Game of Thrones?
I'm writing another book. And it's pretty exciting, actually. There is a passage in the book of Isaiah that describes Jesus perfectly. If you look, it starts in Isaiah chapter 52, verse 13, and it runs until the end of Isaiah chapter 53. Now, if somebody just reads that to you cold and asks, now, who is this? The answer is obvious. I mean, it's Jesus, and it's nobody else in the history of humanity anywhere in the world. Only Jesus fulfills what is written in that passage. And this, for centuries, that's in the book of Isaiah. That's in the Old Testament. This was written before Jesus was born. Now, many skeptics over the centuries just assumed that this had to have been added later or changed or altered to make it look like Jesus because the fit was just too close. But we discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls, and we discovered the great Isaiah scroll among them. It's an extremely well-preserved copy of the entire book of Isaiah, including this passage, the fourth servant song of Isaiah, from Isaiah 52:13 until Isaiah 53:12. It's 15 verses. Of course, they didn't have verses back then, but it's all there, and it's the same. And then people thought, well, maybe that scroll came from after the time of Jesus. Well, the paleographers who looked at the writing style immediately dated it to the BC era, like 100, 150 BC. They weren't precisely sure, but they were adamantly sure that this is from the BC era for sure. But it wasn't until the 1990s that they actually had that scroll carbon dated. And the carbon dating came out at about 125 BC. That's the midpoint of the probability. So it confirmed the paleographic dating. And they did it twice. They did it once in a lab in Zurich, in Switzerland, and they did it once at the University of Arizona in Tucson. And they both agreed. They both came to the same conclusion. So we have something that is we're absolutely sure that it predated Jesus, and it precisely describes Jesus. And Jude in the Talmudic day referred the servant of Isaiah 53 as Messiah. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And I think most of the church is not aware of this, but they're going to be.
Right. How would you date the Earth? Because a lot of people say it's billions of years ago, and then the Christians say, well, it's only 6,000 years ago. Is there any way to specifically say who's right and who's wrong?
The short answer is no. It is a divisive topic. I've heard arguments in many directions. One thing to keep in mind, that a deep dive in the creation narrative, you have to keep in mind a couple of things. Number one, it's not just in Genesis. There are other parts of the Bible that also refer to the creation. That's in the book of John, in the opening, the first 19 verses, and also in the book of Job and in other places as well. And the Psalms tell us that it is in the totality of God's word that we find the truth. We have to look at everything. We can't cherry pick. We can't exclude things that just don't agree with us. We have to deal with all of it. So the second is that there is more than just two ways to look at it. We hear in the public discourse young earth creation, or YEC, and old earth creationists, OEC. And those are not the only two ways to look at this. There might even be a dozen. I'm not sure if it's a dozen, but let's say 10. 10 different ways. I tend to not come down or address things which cannot be decided conclusively. If we can't come to a conclusion then I'm not even beginning to walk down that path. You can alienate people by taking up divisive issues.
Sure.
And I don't talk about date of the earth. I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about other infant baptisms or anything that could be considered denominational or, political or anything like that, because I'm here bringing the word of God, and I'm bringing it to everyone who has ears to hear and eyes to see. And for me to alienate or discourage or anyone based on something that has nothing to do with the message that I'm presenting, I will always avoid doing that. Or at least I'll try. I'm not perfect. I have my opinions, but they don't matter. I mean, until we can get to the bottom of it, they don't matter.
I always like to ask my guests what encouragement or word of wisdom, word of knowledge, how, would you give to my listeners about this topic that we discussed today?
Yes, it's that we can figure this out. And I'm showing how in the book. This is a question that is probably, arguably, the most important, vital question in the entire universe, for all of humanity, for all of time. Is there a God? Yes or no? Is there a supernatural? Yes or no? So much depends upon the answer. And to be able to come to a conclusion, to see objective evidence that, yes, there is a supernatural, that supernatural entity is indeed the God of the Bible, and that supernatural entity is indeed the creator of the universe, that is profound. And by the way, those are the punchlines to the three proofs that are found in the book. But you have to read the whole book. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
And where can people buy your book?
You can buy it on Amazon. I'm proud to say, we just released the ebook version on Kindle.
Well, James, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We greatly
thank you, Dorsey.
having you.
Thank you, Dorsey. I really enjoy speaking with you. And I wish your listeners all the best, and God bless.
Thank you. Well, guys and girls, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for listening. Please go and check out Jamie's book, and please go and like my website and my podcast as well. And until next time, God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you again for joining Dorsey Ross on this episode of The Dorsey Ross Show. Please like, share, and tell others about the show. Also, please check out the other podcast episodes. And if you would like, donate to this podcast and buy Dorsey a coffee. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.